We all know Barcelona's academy is world class.
Who plays it inside. Great tackle, but no, it's finished off by Xavi.
Messi again. He's led one to the very goes, and that's amazing. Lionel Messi with a second goal of such high quality.
La Masia is undoubtedly at the core, a center of their success. But not every player from the academy plays for the first team. They have to find their feet elsewhere. These are the forgotten wonder kids of Barcelona. Starting with one of the best fullbacks in Europe, Alejandro Grimaldo. This story begins at La Masia when he is just 12 years old back in 2008. And to say Grimaldo showed promise would be an understatement. At 15 years old, he makes his debut being the youngest player in the Segunda Division. However, he never played for Barcelona. He took his talents to Portugal, representing Benfica, and he went on to make over 300 appearances. And in many regards, I think he was underrated. He is one of the best fullbacks representing Bayern Leverkusen in the Bundesliga, still undefeated at the top of the table. He could not have fit into Xavi Alonso's program better. Game shifting, game changing, and the ultimate provider. It's not just Real Madrid that regrets losing out on Kubo. Barcelona had that opportunity as well. Rewinding the years, back to 2009, Kubo visits the Barcelona soccer camp and he stands out. Later joining La Masia and being coined as the Japanese Messi. He had big shoes to fill. 74 goals in 30 games for the under-11s. Unfortunately, at least for Barcelona, disaster struck. As you may recall, they breached FIFA's international transfer policy, and they couldn't actually play Kubo. Therefore, Kubo returned to Japan, but not for long before Real Madrid showed interest in a new acquisition. After a multitude of loans, Kubo goes on to leave Los Blancos permanently, setting his sights at Real Sociedad, where he has been standing out, and we saw him receive a Player of the Month award in La Liga for September. Part of the core at Real Sociedad. And his potential and even career trajectory is on the up and up. This might be one of the most bizarre career paths of any player on the list. We're talking about Adama Traore. Starting out at Barcelona Academy, it looked as if Traore had all the tools for success. The technical capabilities, the explosiveness, we've seen the physical attributes, a mix and match of characteristics that create pro athletes. And surely he would dominate matches. That didn't pan out, and we saw Adama Traore head to the Premier League with Aston Villa, where it did not turn into a positive experience and Villa was relegated. He then left for Middlesbrough, which continued along the same narrative, didn't really come into his own, and Middlesbrough, similar to Aston Villa, were also relegated. Then we saw the upturn. Adama Traore joins Wolves, found some form. He's providing, he's showcasing, capturing moments. It's undeniable that he's frightening, terrorizing defenses. But the question that needs answering, will he find somewhere to be at his best again? An iconic family name like Cruyff is always going to come with great expectation. I don't envy this position that Jordi Cruyff was in from the beginning of his career. While his father set the legacy, laid down the groundwork, to its very DNA, Jordi Cruyff did very little. He was offloaded to Manchester United, but was not an impact player, even though he won some titles, but never truly being a key member of that squad. He came back to Spain shortly after, and then went on to become the sporting director for Barcelona, which he's recently stepped down from with hopes and ambitions to get back into coaching. And when you look at Jordi Cruyff's career, it makes you question, is it possible for Ronaldo or Messi's children to ever share in a similar level of success, at least on the actual pitch? Surely, you have all the tools and resources, but you could just as easily find yourself as the next Erling Haaland or perhaps Jordi Cruyff. Mikel Arteta, someone I know very well. Of course, he's a top manager currently in the Premier League, but it all started at La Masia. A childhood friend of Xavi Alonso, and even though their careers don't necessarily directly intercept, they parallel at the same time. Arteta joined La Masia in 1997, where he only played for Barcelona's B team. He then left for Scotland, where he represented Rangers for multiple seasons, before returning to Spain at Real Sociedad, Xavi Alonso's boyhood club, but failed to make any impact. And a loan that I know oh so well You might see the Everton kits behind us. Mikel Arteta went to Merseyside. He joined Everton. Well, at the same time, Xavi Alonso represented Liverpool. Mikel Arteta got a taste of the Premier League before officially signing in 2005. Shout out to David Moyes, a club legend at the Toffees, making over 162 appearances, which allowed Mikel Arteta to join Arsenal as the next step in his career. Gathered another 110 appearances in the Premier League and clearly left an imprint. He now manages the team. Last season led them to a fierce title battle, and this year he's looking to improve on that resolve. It's got to be said, he's one of the highest in-demand managers in football at the moment. Keeping with the Arsenal theme, we have Hector Bellerin. He was originally at Barcelona's academy, but didn't have his breakthrough until joining Arsenal. He was promoted quickly to the senior side and was a force to be reckoned with in his breakout season. He had plenty of pace, certain levels of excitement, and just an overall attacking threat through the wings. Injuries knocked him down in the pecking order, which led to a loan to Real Betis, then eventually sold back to Barcelona. He had a brief spell in Portugal at Sporting before an official return to Real Betis, where he currently plays. And throughout his career, he's been one of those footballers you needed to follow for, I don't want to say the off-the-field antics, because that's not necessarily the case, but his influence in fashion, walk-in runways, and just general impact amongst the culture. Side note, he is also a part owner of the League Two club, Forest Green. Now, at 28 years old, it almost feels as if his career and the hype around Hector Bellerin has faded just as quickly as it arrived. Giovani dos Santos, I remember this story well. He came through the academy at the same time as Messi, and I remember the hype was brewing. Maybe I was a little bit closer on a personal end because with Giovani dos Santos being Mexican, North America, we've also got that rivalry between national teams. I was constantly being reminded by my friends all around the country of how good Giovani dos Santos was gonna be. And to be fair, he had the potential to be a mainstay in the main team at Barcelona, but he was impatient and he wanted to play. He joined Spurs, but failed to make an impact. Same could be said with Ipswich or Galatasaray. Then became a bit of a journeyman, leaving permanently to Mallorca before then joining Villarreal. I remember vividly as he joined MLS in 2015, and he excelled at the LA Galaxy, but it might have been too little, too late, if anything, overshadowed by the likes of Ibrahimovic. And I think it's safe to say his career was a little bit disappointing, at least in terms of where it started with expectation. When it was all said and done, with over 300 appearances amongst a variety of different clubs and leagues, Giovani dos Santos produced 66 goals. And nearly half of those goals came from MLS at a later stage of his career. Onana, that's right, we're talking about the goalkeeper. And maybe you don't know the backstory, joining La Masia from Samuel Eto'o's foundation from Cameroon. But he would never play for the first team. And in all fairness, goalkeepers in particular typically develop throughout their career. There's not as much of a pressing need for them to be early adopters and make an instant impact. Onana would go on to join another prestigious academy at Ajax in 2015. This footballing education not only built him up as a goalkeeper, but provided him with confidence, the ability to play out of the back, and just impressive passing range all around. He impressed at Ajax, representing them for 6 years, but it had somewhat of a bitter ending with the doping scandal, which led to a release and a free transfer, where Inter Milan picked up Onana. However, as we date back to a couple interviews in 2019, Onana had made it clear that he wanted the opportunity to play in the Premier League, and over the summer, he joined Manchester United. And I think we'd all agree he's a bit of a controversial figure in goal, showcasing both moments of madness and magic, both in equal measure. You might remember the name from some of the past Ultimate teams. Balde Keita, force to be reckoned with. He was at La Masia for a long stint from 2005 all the way up to 2011, and was predicted to have a fantastic career. Explosiveness, had the technical capability, the dribbling, just a nuisance to defenders. If I recall, there was some sort of pranking incident which led to a loan, and then finally Keita being signed to Lazio. His progression and impact at Lazio brought international interest from the likes of Manchester United and Real Madrid. You could argue this is where his career peaked. We saw him go to Monaco, multiple loans in between, but he wasn't really able to replicate the same type of form or explosiveness that we saw at Lazio. He's currently on loan in La Liga, but is yet to make an appearance this year. And I'd like to mention that he's only 28 years old. We could see some level of a revitalization or a resurgence. And finally, controversial figure, we have the career of Icardi, a must-follow Instagram account, and an interesting pathway without a doubt. You could argue he came through at one of the worst times for a striker at La Masia because Pep was promoting and generating a false nine presence at Barcelona. Icardi went to Sampdoria, where he was impressive in his second season, tallying up a double-digit goal output. Inter Milan picked him up, and the rest is history. Clinical, dangerous, a true number 9, if you will, scoring 126 goals while at the club. It would be an easy argument that he was one of the most prolific strikers in this period. He left in 2019 and went to PSG as they were trying to assemble some sort of new or fresh look on the attack. He definitely didn't reach the same heights as Inter Milan. And he is now part of the new look Galatasaray, which includes Icardi, the explosive Zaha, who put on an absolute clinic throughout his career at Crystal Palace, Mertens, and Ziyech, who I don't think we got to see the best of the best when he was representing Chelsea. Barcelona has produced fantastic players and continue to do so. But there are so many players that couldn't break through, yet they found their place elsewhere. They aren't the only club, which begs the question, which team should we cover next?